intrinsic to how we do problem solving is that for the most part, humanity solves problems in ways that make worse problems. There's not that many exceptions. And whether we're creating a piece of technology to solve a problem, or we're creating a bill, or a political solution, or we're creating a new set of memetics for like a social solution, or whatever, any of the methods we have, a new company for a market solution. So you look at it and you say, all right, well, we were running out of easy big game. And so there was a problem of feeding enough people and whatever. So we figured out the plow. Well, the plow was awesome for us, but it was also the beginning of massive desertification and having enough surplus that war was really advantageous for other people to come capture our surplus, and the beginning of the types of animal husbandry that led to so many of the problems in the world, and actually the beginning of certain types of fundamental patriarchies. And we're like, wow, a lot of things got fucked up by the nature of how we did the plow thing. And all the way back to stone tools, if we hadn't got stone tools, there'd be no environmental issues, right? Like we wouldn't have went and became the apex predator in every environment and started extincting earlier species. If we hadn't got the wheel, we come to modern time, we say, all right, we have, I think this example is funny, but it's actually a good one. The internal combustion engine to be able to make the automobile was super helpful for us. We could travel further, faster, easier than we could by horse and carriage by a lot. And we were trying to solve the problem of the limitation of horses, that we had to feed them, that they shit all over the place, those types of things. And so the internal combustion engine solved the horse shit problem, right? London was covered in horse shit and the other associated horse difficulties. And that's awesome. And we all like the quality of life associated with cars. But then we look at the proliferation of internal combustion engines that left cars and also went into tanks and trucks and ships and whatever. And we recognize that all of the oil spills in the Amazon and the Valdez and the, Gulf and whatever, and all the wars over oil and the destabilization of the Middle East forever, and all of the global economy based on the US petrodollar and climate change itself, and all of those issues are the result of the success of solving the horseshit problem. And because what happens is, for us to solve a problem, we define the problem in a narrow way, right? The narrow problem is defined in 1 or 2 or 5 metrics. So we want the carriages to be able to go faster without the limitation of horses or something, right? And so we're working on a solution to that narrowly defined problem, but the solution we create is going to interact with the complexity of the actual world in a lot of metrics that weren't part of what we were designing to optimize. And so we didn't say also in as environmentally sustainable way that doesn't create oil spills and wars over oil. And, we weren't factoring those things. But for the solution to really be a solution to a problem, it has to be larger than the problem. It has to be able to overtake the problem. And if it does overtake the problem and it solves certain definitions of the problem, narrow definitions, but that it interacts with the complex world where it ends up externalizing harm in other areas, but it's larger than the original problem was, those places where it externalizes harm will probably be larger or more complex. And another way of saying it is just as humans develop more power, we are just shitty users of power currently, right? So that's coming back to the rivalrous thing, but it's also coming back to the even not rivalrous, just we aren't sense making well enough to say, if we're making a new piece of tech, are we making something that, even if we weren't doing it for a rivalrous purpose, isn't going to externalize harm because we're being adequately considerate of not just defining the problem in a narrow way, but defining the problem embedding space where we can make sure that our solution doesn't cause worse problems. And so this is a fundamental change in not the nature of whether we're trying to serve a rivalrous goal, but the nature of our sense making to understand complexity better and to be able to understand the embedding space of our solutions better. So this is another thing at the generator function that we have to address, is we have to define problems in such a way that the solution to that problem is actually omnipositive rather than positive for something and damaging for something else. Because it's not just rivalrous groups, it's also rivalrous metrics, right? A metric based on theory of trade-offs where we benefit something and harm a bunch of other things, and maybe things that we hadn't even anticipated, is going to create inexorable problems, especially as we're as powerful as we are.